Devoted to the principles of conspicuous waste, on which all societies base, Prestige of Precision had fitted his Victorian mansion in Central Park with elevators, house phones, dumbwaiters, and all the other labor-saving devices which jaunting had made obsolete. The servants in that giant gingerbread castle walked dutifully from room to room, opening and closing doors and climbing stairs. Prestige arose, dressed with the aid of his valet and barber, descended to the morning room with the aid of an elevator, and breakfasted, assisted by a butler, footman, and waitress. He left the morning room and entered his study. In an age where communication systems were virtually extinct, when it was far easier to jaunt directly to a man's office for a discussion than to telephone or telegraph, Precision still maintained an antique telephone switchboard with an operator in his study. "Get me Dagenham," he said. The operator struggled and at last put a call through to Dagenham Couriers, Inc. This was the 100 million credit organization of bonded jaunters guaranteed to perform any public or confidential service for any principal. Their fee was 1 credit per mile. Dagenham guaranteed to get a courier around the world in 80 minutes. 80 seconds later, after Precision's call was just through, a Dagenham courier appeared on the private jaunt stage outside Precision's home, was identified, and admitted through the jaunt-proof labyrinth behind the entrance. Like every member of the Dagenham staff, he was an M-class jaunter, capable of teleporting 1,000 miles a jump indefinitely, and familiar with thousands of jaunt coordinates. He was a senior specialist in chicanery and cajolerie, trained to the incisive efficiency and boldness that characterized Dagenham couriers, and reflected the ruthlessness of the founder. "Precision," he said, wasting no time on protocol. "I want to hire Dagenham." "Ready, Precision." "Not you. I want Saul Dagenham himself." "Mr. Dagenham no longer gives personal service for less than 100,000 credits." "The amount will be 5 times that." "Fee or percentage?" "Both. 250,000 fee and 250,000 guaranteed against 10% of the total amount at risk." "Agreed. The matter?" "Pyre." Spell it, please." "The name means nothing to you?" "No." "Good. It will to Dagenham. Pyre. Capital P, Y, R, capital E. Pronounced pyre, as in funeral pyre. Tell Dagenham we've located the pyre. He's engaged to get it, at all costs, through a man named Foyle. Gulliver Foyle." The courier produced a tiny silver pearl, a memo bead, repeated Precision's instructions into it, and left without another word. Precision turned to his telephone operator. "Get me Regis Sheffield," he directed. 10 minutes after the call went through to Regis Sheffield's law office, a young law clerk appeared on Precision's private jaunt stage, was vetted, and admitted through the maze. He was a bright young man with a scrubbed face and the expression of a delighted rabbit. "Excuse the delay, Precision," he said. "We got your call in Chicago, and I'm still only a D-class 500-miler. Took me a while to get here." "Is your chief trying a case in Chicago?" "Chicago, New York, and Washington. He's been on the jaunt from court to court all morning. We fill in for him when he's in another court." "I want to retain him." "Honored, Precision, but Mr. Sheffield's pretty busy." "Not too busy for Pyre." "I'm sorry, sir, I don't quite—" "No, you don't. But Sheffield will. Just tell him. Pyre as in funeral pyre and the amount of his fee."
Well, that is... Which is...
250,000 retainer and 250,000 guaranteed against 10% of the total amount at risk.
And what performance is required of Mr. Sheffield?
To prepare every known legal device for kidnapping a man and holding him against the Army, the Navy, and the police.
Quite. And the man?
Gulliver Foyle. The law clerk muttered quick notes into a memo bead, thrust the bead into his ear, listened, nodded, and departed. Precision left the study and ascended the plush stairs to his daughter's suite to pay his morning respects. In the homes of the wealthy, the rooms of the female members were blind, without windows or doors, open only to the jaunting of intimate members of the family. Thus was morality maintained and chastity defended. But since Olivia Precision was herself blind to normal sight, she could not jaunt. Consequently, her suite was entered through doors closely guarded by ancient retainers in the Prestigian clan livery. Olivia Prestigian was a glorious albino. Her hair was white silk, her skin was white satin, her nails, her lips, and her eyes were coral. She was beautiful, and blind in a wonderful way, for she could not see in the infrared, only from 7,500 angstroms to 1 millimeter wavelengths. She saw heat waves, magnetic fields, radio waves, radar, sonar, and electromagnetic fields. She was holding her grand levee in the drawing room of the suite. She sat in a brocaded winged chair, sipping tea, guarded by her duenna, holding court, chatting with a dozen men and women standing about the room. She looked like an exquisite statue of marble and coral, her blind eyes flashing as she saw, and yet did not see. She saw the drawing room as a pulsating flow of heat emanations ranging from hot highlights to cool shadows. She saw the dazzling magnetic patterns of clocks, phones, lights, and locks. She saw and recognized people by their characteristic heat patterns, radiated by their faces and bodies. She saw, around each head, an aura of the faint electromagnetic brain pattern, and, sparkling through the heat radiation of each body, the ever-changing tone of muscle and nerve. Precision did not care for the artists, musicians, and fops Olivia kept around her, but he was pleased to see a scattering of society notables this morning. There was Sears Roebuck, a Gillette, young Sidney Kodak, who would one day be Kodak of Kodak, a Hoignot, Buick of Buick, and R.H. Macy the 16th, head of the powerful Sachs Gimbel clan. Precision paid his respects to his daughter and left the house. He set off for his clan headquarters at 99 Wall Street in a coach and four driven by a coachman, assisted by a groom, both wearing the Precision trademark of red, black, and blue. The black P on a field of scarlet and cobalt was one of the most ancient and distinguished trademarks in the social register, rivaling the 57 of the Heinz clan and the RR of the Rolls-Royce dynasty in antiquity. The head of the Precision clan was a familiar sight to New York jaunters. Iron gray, handsome, powerful, impeccably dressed, and mannered in the old-fashioned style, Precision of Precision was the epitome of the socially elect, for he was so exalted in station that he employed coachmen, grooms, hostlers, stable boys, and horses to perform a function for him which ordinary mortals performed by jaunting. As men climbed the social ladder, they displayed their position by their refusal to jaunt. The newly adopted into a great commercial clan rode an expensive bicycle. A rising clansman drove a small sports car. The captain of a sept was transported in a chauffeur-driven antique from the old days, a vintage Bentley or Cadillac, or a towering Lagonda. A heir presumptive in a direct line of succession to the clan chieftainship staffed a yacht or a plane. Precision of Precision, head of the clan Precision, owned carriages, cars, yachts, planes, and trains. His position in society was so lofty that he had not jaunted in 40 years. Secretly he scorned the bustling new rich like the Dagenhams and Sheffields, who still jaunted and were unashamed. Precision entered the keep at 99 Wall Street that was Castle Precision. It was staffed and guarded by his famous jaunt watch, all in clan livery. Precision walked with the stately gait of a chieftain as they piped him to his office. Indeed, he was grander than a chieftain, as an important government official awaiting audience discovered to his dismay. That unfortunate man leapt forward from the waiting crowd of petitioners as Precision passed. "Mr. Precision," he began, "I'm from the Internal Revenue Department. I must see you this morning." Precision cut him off with an icy stare. "There are thousands of Precisions," he pronounced. "All are addressed as Mr. But I am Precision of Precision, head of house and sept, first of the family, chieftain of the clan. I am addressed as Precision, not Mr. Precision. Just Precision." He turned and entered his office where his staff greeted him with a mute chorus. "Good morning, Precision." Precision nodded and smiled his basilisk smile, and seated himself behind the enthroned desk, while the jaunt watch skirled their pipes and ruffled their drums. Precision signaled for the audience to begin. The household equerry stepped forward with a scroll. Precision disdained memo beads and all mechanical business device.
Report on Clan Precision Enterprises, the equerry began. Common stock, high, 201.5. Low, 201 1/4. Average quotations: New York, Paris, Ceylon, Tokyo.
Precision waved his hand irritably. The equerry retired to be replaced by Black Rod.
Another Mr. Presto to be invested, Precision.
Precision restrained his impatience and went through the tedious ceremony of swearing in the 497th Mr. Presto in the hierarchy of Precision Prestos who managed the shops in the Precision retail division. Until recently, the man had had a face and body of his own. Now, after years of cautious testing and careful indoctrination, he had been elected to join the Prestos. After 6 months of surgery and psycho-conditioning, he was identical to the other 496 Mr. Prestos, and to the idealized portrait of Mr. Presto which hung behind Precision's dais, a kindly, honest man resembling Abraham Lincoln, a man who instantly inspired affection and trust. Around the world, purchasers entered an identical Precision store and were greeted by an identical manager, Mr. Presto. He was rivaled, but not surpassed, by the Codex clan Mr. Quick and Montgomery Ward's Uncle Monty. When the ceremony was completed, Precision arose abruptly to indicate that the public investiture was ended. The office was cleared of all but the high officials. Precision paced, obviously repressing his seething impatience. He never swore, but his restraint was more terrifying than profanity. "Foyle," he said in a suffocated voice. "A common sailor. Dirt, dregs, gutter scum. But that man stands between me and—"
"If you please, Precision," Black Rod interrupted timidly. "It's 11 o'clock, Eastern Time, 8 o'clock Pacific."
"What?"
"If you please, Precision, may I remind you that there's a launching ceremony at 9 Pacific Time? You are to preside at Vancouver shipyards. Our new freighter, the Precision Princess. It will take some time to establish three-dimensional broadcast contact with the shipyard, so we had better—"
"I will attend in person."
"In person?"
Black Rod faltered.
"But we cannot possibly fly to Vancouver in an hour, Precision.
"I will jaunt." Precision snapped. Such was his agitation.